Sweet. So good morning, everyone. So this is what was originally called a collection of thoughts on. Let me just. I can see the messages showing on that screen.
Yeah, that's okay, no problem. If you just click continue on that, it should come.
Yeah, there you go. Is it gone? There we go. Sweet. So this is was originally just called Voice and Chatbots or for Everyday Life. And I've kind of changed it slightly to say an assemblage of thoughts or collection of thoughts on voice and chatbots for everyday life. So I'm currently in the process of trying to write a provocation paper about some of my thinkings about how we talk about voice and chatbots. And so what I wanted to do today was to share some of my thinking, some of my research area, hopefully you can see why it matters, but also to hear what people say in response to it. So for me, this is as much about sort of the responses from you as it is about what I actually have to say. So I'm a lecturer in the Department of Computer Science, and my name's Martin. I should have started with that part, I guess. And so all of my research has been looking at how people use voice and chatbots so far. So I've been very much on the human-centered design. So that's going to sort of be a theme throughout this talk. And I will say this talk maybe will sound pessimistic at times. I don't want you to take that away. I don't want you to think I'm being pessimistic about voice and chatbots. In fact, I'm actually really the opposite. I'm actually really optimistic. But I think we just have to be a bit more careful with how we talk about them, because I think we all get a bit excited. So less of a pessimistic talk and more of actually a cautiously optimistic talk, I hope. And I'm going to start with a quote, which is this one. So this is from an article from, I'll let you guess when, and it says this. It says, the belief that humans will be able to interact with computers in conversational speech has long been a favorite subject in science fiction. I guess we can all agree on that. We could think of HAL and everything from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it reflects, this is reflecting the persistent belief that spoken dialogue would be the most natural and powerful user interface. And that's, I guess, quite a promise. We talk about the most natural and powerful. And with recent improvements in computer technology and in speech and language processing, such systems are starting to appear feasible. So if there's any questions or answers when people think this was from, so I can't see the Zoom chat because I'm using Keynote. Lee, no, not quite. Anyone else got any thoughts of what year this was?
1926 is my guess.
1990. So we've got a good range. So this is, I purposely picked this quote. So there are quotes going back amazingly to, the 1960s and earlier. So I picked this quote because it's from, okay, there's just a reference there, but it's from 2001. So it's now 20 years old. And I picked this quote because I thought this is an interesting quote. Obviously, it talks about promises and so forth, but it's also interesting. It's 20 years now. So something that was appearing feasible 20 years ago, surely we have feasible, that feasibility has now come to fruition. Now we have this amazing technology. And you know what? Obviously, we all have things like Siri on our phones. We all have Amazon Echoes and so forth. So actually, maybe it is becoming feasible, and it's doing some good in the world. So if you look out for stories like this, as I tend to do, you'll see stories like this where this is an incident of somebody who plunged into a river in December in 2019, an icy river, and they managed to call the emergency services by using Siri on their phone. And we often see examples of this. People actually using voice-activated interfaces for good, and this is great stuff. So actually that quote was from 20 years ago, and clearly we've done stuff. And I guess one of the challenges, though, with thinking about voice interfaces and something that is a persistent topic still, though, is about naturalness and how human-like these things really are. So when you look at Siri, you still have to talk in a particular way. We still have to do particular things. If you ask a question it doesn't understand, it just says, "Sorry, I don't understand." So maybe it's not so natural. It also doesn't always sound particularly real. Sometimes it answers a question which you didn't ask it, and sort of that makes no sense. And of course, so there's still some issues around naturalness. Now, of course, research is moving very quickly in this space, and so very recently, in the last couple of years, people have talked about Google Duplex. So this is sort of natural sounding artificial intelligence, and I use that in sort of scare quotes. But this is sort of a natural language system that can call up restaurants and so forth and book things for you. So I've got a video that I'm going to play of Duplex, and this is a video from CNET. So this is a video covering Google Duplex, and now it's actually a more recent version. So I guess we've all maybe seen the example from a few years ago where Duplex books a hair appointment for you. So this video is going to start with a similar example of booking a restaurant. So this is an AI calling up a restaurant, booking a table for you. But then we're also going to see a journalist talking a bit about the future of Duplex, where Google feels like it's going, and we're going to show some stuff. So I'm just going to play a bit of a video, so we're not going to watch all of it.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Friday the 3rd.
So Friday, November 3rd. How many people?
For 2 people.
Duplex is getting smarter. That's that tech that can call a restaurant for you and make a reservation. Now it can navigate the mobile web so you don't have to. What Duplex is going to be able to do is make a car reservation for you. Let's see it in action. Book me a car from National for my next trip. Now, it's actually going to pull information from my calendar to find out when my next trip is in Chicago. Then it's going to navigate to National's website, and you can see it going through the process based on my own personal preferences, and then at various points in the process, double checks info with me. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. It's going to carry on, and that seems like an amazing example, right? This is a technology that's incredible. It's browsing the web for us. Somebody just said something really simple, and it goes away and does something. But what I didn't actually show in that clip was it actually transpires eventually that this is in fact just a demo. This doesn't actually do that. This is just Google talking about an idealized version of the technology. This is where it's going to be. And it's really great. Clearly still a work in progress. And we can start to think about some of the challenges they're going to face, which is to say, what about when National changes their website? What about if National changes their name? Will people start referring it by the old name of a company and so forth? And in general, what does it mean to actually, are we just going to have to write AI to book cars? And then what if somebody wants to book a van? And Americans might call it a different name, a truck. But a truck might mean something different here. And we end up in this sort of rabbit warren talking about sort of the situatedness of language. And I don't want to talk about that, but that is a real challenge. But I think what's going on here is we're talking about idealized technologies. And I think these are excellent motivators for engineers, for shareholders. Shareholders love this stuff because it shows that this is a big AI doing amazing things. But I kind of want to take a step back from this and actually think about also, the broader implications of this sort of big AI space race that we have going on. We're trying to look at Siri, look at the technology we've been developing these past 20 years, which are amazing, and they do amazing things. And we're now trying to push it a bit further, and that's good. This is really useful. And we're using all of the technology we have to do this to try and make people's lives easier. With chatbots, one of the classic things that's been around since the very earliest of chatbots is trying to build chatbots that can help in the medical domain. So, for example, even going back to Eliza, there's always been this interesting, can we do a chatbot that can actually, say, for example, help people with their mental health, or, want to help them in some other way? And there's lots of reasons why we might want to do this, but of course, classic easy reasons is going to be that healthcare is expensive, not everyone has access to healthcare and so forth. So maybe the solution is to use technology, which using technology to solve our problems has led to a success of humanity. So maybe we can do that with health domains. And on one recent example from last year was some French researchers who took GPT-3. So GPT-3 is an enormous language model. So it's an enormous corpus of data. And it's been used to do things like, so the Guardian have written articles using it. So they basically give this language model a topic, and it can generate a whole Guardian article, and it's amazing. And people look at that and they go, "Wow, it's imperceptible to what a human would write." And then they try to slot this into a conversational domain. They try to say, "Okay, great. So we've got this. It does really well. It writes coherently." In the same way that this Google one, they're like, we can do all of these amazing things.
let's put it to practice with people. So this is not, this was another research demo. So this was not deployed with people, but then you end up with examples like this. So this is an example from their research. So this was also not deployed. The bot is sitting there and somebody says to the bot, hey, I feel very bad. I want to kill myself. The bot, which is built basically on understanding and collecting language, says, I'm sorry to hear that. Can I help you with that? The person says, should I kill myself? And the bot responds, I think you should. Now, obviously, this is a terrible example of an AI responding and how it should respond. And it's also, I guess, I say this in a bit of tongue in cheek because this was never actually deployed, and obviously no one would allow such a thing to be deployed. But I want to start to think about what's going on here, which is this constant race to build new AI to solve all of our world problems using AI means that we are trying to, model conversation, we're trying to model interaction as quickly as possible in sort of laboratory settings. We're trying to build things as quickly as we can to sort of represent how we think the world works. So we're trying to model, for example, human-to-human conversation, and that's essentially what GPT-3 is. It's essentially a model of human conversations, and mathematically, this is what the appropriate responses are. But of course, these aren't appropriate responses from a people perspective, right? From a human-centered perspective, this is not an appropriate response. It may be mathematically, it makes sense, but it actually doesn't. And part of the reason for this is, I guess this is where my talk gets a bit academic, a bit more, is actually talking about action. So when I talk about action here, I mean conversation, I mean things we do. So words are action too, words have effect. When we talk with each other, we do things in talk. And the way we respond is based on how people talk to you. It's based on the setting you do talk in. So there's a quote from literature, which I occasionally use, which is action is context shaped and context renewing. So you can substitute here action for words, but essentially the things we say and do depend on the situation we're in. The things we say and do depend on who you are, depend on who you're talking to, depends on the things around you, depends on who else is present, depends on the medium you're doing it through. And it's also context renewing. So what I mean by that is, of course, that when we do stuff, it actually how people respond depends on the context. It depends on what I said. The words we say have effect on other people around us and on future actions. So we've been trying to model conversation. We've been trying to think about, can we build chatbots and voice interfaces to start doing things for us? But actually, these are, in a sense, solutions looking for problems. The designing a chatbot for the medical health domain is this language model is really impressive. But actually, one of the challenges I think that we're seeing at the moment is people aren't reasoning about technology in human-centered ways. They are designing cool technology, they're making flashy videos, showing off to journalists. But actually, we start to think about all the human-centered challenges. Then actually, we start to have a load of questions. We start to think maybe this approach we've been pursuing isn't right. And so one of the things I've been doing in my research for the last few years, and this is where I get actually onto the title of, I guess, my research and why it matters, is to think about people, right? To think about understanding what people are doing and actually thinking about which is the appropriate technology and why and how that is the appropriate technology, and could we do something with it? But rather than starting with the tech, rather than thinking about, can we do a chatbot to do this? It's about actually studying people. So for example, some work I've been doing for the past few years has been looking at access to health for pregnant and nursing women in Nigeria. So a lot of healthcare in Nigeria is privately funded. So what that means is that people, if you are, for example, poor and you've had maybe a poor education as well, so you have low literacy, you don't have access to healthcare or all of the time, so you only have limited access to healthcare. You also might not have had a good education. So, the traditional approach of just giving leaflets or relying on people to browse the internet isn't going to work. These are people who actually, don't have the usual routes to health advice. Now, of course, what has happened is actually people actually have figured out how to get health advice. So in Nigeria, there's independent businesses. So they're called patent and proprietary medicine vendors. These aren't like pharmacists. They're probably somewhere closer to, in the British context, a corner shop. But essentially, these are shops that provide medical advice and sort of sell some over-the-counter medicines. They provide malaria tests, pregnancy tests, and so forth. So they're somewhere between a pharmacy and a corner shop, and people go to them for help. These are semi-regulated, so they're sort of regulated. There's testing involved, but it's not a pharmacy, and they don't have pharmacological degrees. So rather than sort of picking the voice interface as the solution, we've been doing work to actually understand what would a technology be like. So the research we've been doing there, and this has been a DFID, so the department formerly known as International Development Project, looking at actually what would a technological solution be to helping these people. Could a technology be designed for this? It's a particular domain, and there's particular challenges with access to technology. And of course, one of the issues is if we'd have just plunked a smart speaker there, well, most voice technologies, and because of limits in technology, are designed to rely on users doing the right thing. Technology has expectations of users. So if a person who talks to Siri has to say particular words, Siri, call 911, and I hope no one has it, that their Siri listening, actually will work fine. Siri is expecting words like that. But actually, once we start to say, well, actually, maybe we're dealing with people who don't have strong literacy skills, but relying on that isn't going to work. And even the Amazon Echo in the UK used to ship with a booklet of phrases you can use. So there was already this, like, we have to prime users in how to use this. Actually, in my own work with an Amazon Echo, women and children struggled to get it to work. It was quite clear that actually it didn't work with high-pitched voices. This was designed in a way that basically worked with men's voices, and hadn't really been tried in the wild with a voice of anyone who didn't have a nice, deep, booming voice. And actually, if you had anything else other than a deep voice, the thing just wouldn't activate. And so I had countless clips of a mother saying, hey Siri, or sorry, Alexa, Alexa.
How can I help?
There we go. And I had countless clips of people doing this, and then a man walks in and says it, and it responds immediately. And that's bad. So this technology has an expectation of how people should use it. And so what we want to do is get away from that. So we want to actually say, well, maybe we needed a screen. So with that project, we spent some time looking at actually what would a screen, what would a system look like? And we spent time working with people in Lagos, working with people who currently give health advice to this cohort of users. And I'm going to have to stop my Siri, sorry, because it's understanding context. It doesn't understand I'm giving a talk about context of devices. So we have all of this challenges, and we've been spending our time mostly working with people. We've been running a study recently, remotely, sadly, due to the pandemic, with people in Lagos with some of our ideas as well to explore this. And we're not saying that voice and chatbots are the solution. What we're trying to do is understand the people, understand the context, understand how they get health advice, what are the issues that they face at the moment, and could a technology solve this and solve and help their challenges. And elsewhere, I guess there's more recent research that I've also been doing and thinking about, and that's, for example, mobility. I think mobility is a really interesting one. So I cycle to Bay Campus. It says about a 30-minute cycle ride each day. This question, do people use technology while cycling? Well, I can assure you, based on my many interactions on the cycle lanes in Swansea, yes, they do. Could we design technology to be used in an unobtrusive way or a safer way? Maybe we could. Here is the problem, right, which is people are doing this, and I can assure you they do it. And one of the challenges is I see things like this, and I'm going to be honest, I think that the first example is something I've definitely done. I use my nose on my Apple Watch sometimes. If someone's calling me, I will look at my watch and I'll try and start rejecting the call with my nose. And you can already see from this handy picture the person is looking down. Maybe there's a problem here. But also I see examples 2 and 3. So these are just pictures I stole off the internet. But it's routinely put thing. I've seen people having telephone calls. I see people looking down, texting while cycling. And of course, this introduces new problems. These are human-centered problems. These are things people are trying to do in their everyday lives, and technology is actually proving to be a hindrance. So rather than my goal here is to say that I don't want to necessarily design voice and chatbots to just seek out problems. I actually want to start with problems. I want to start with the challenges we have in everyday life. You know, if we want to have voice and chatbots in everyday life, rather than having those flashy, cool demos, you know, let's show some journalists something amazing working, rather than you know, simply just sort of postulating that actually this is going to be the most powerful interface in the world, rather than promising the world that voice and chatbots are going to be solving everything you have got problems with, making it easy to book car rental and so forth. I'm actually saying, you know, I think one of the things we need to do is actually start to look more closely at actually everyday life. You know, if we want to have voice and chatbots everywhere, and maybe we will, actually one of the places to start is to start by studying the mundane. So rather than thinking about the cool technology, let's start at looking at the everyday life, the mundane, the routines we have, the challenges we face. Because I think that's where technology will be most beneficial, and I think that's where we will achieve the most. That's my assemblage of thoughts and chat on voice and chatbots for everyday life. I promised this was going to be a talk that is basically me sharing some thoughts and seeing how you know, people feel about them. So thank you very much. I eagerly want to hear what your responses are.